What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And do recognize that the Dr. Vibe show is the home of epic conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. And we are jacked to have a friend back to the Dr. Vibe Show, home of epic conversations. And also know I'm a certified empowerment coach and president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. And we do have a friend back. She hasn't been with us since January of 2016. It's been a while, yes, but she is positive productive. I don't like to say busy. She's positive productive. Who is our friend? Our returning friend is Karen Fleshman. She is a racial equality trainer, HuffPost blogger, and government accountability activist. She's going to explain what that is, by the way. Her mission is to build and support a community of people committed to love, learning, accountability, and action on race in America. So we are going to be chatting about anti-racism and white supremacy in America. Not none of that's going on right now. So that we just brought Karen on to just have a chat, nonsense, etc. No, joking aside, she is very, very passionate about this cause, and that's why I have her on, because she's doing outstanding stuff, not only in her area, but we're speaking it around the world. And we had a conversation earlier. We're gonna speak it that she's gonna be speaking or connecting with a big organization, but we'll wait for that. Karen is here. Welcome back, Karen. How are you?
I am wonderful, Dr. Vibe. I'm so excited to be here with you and with all your incredible public that loves your show so much. And thank you so much for having me on again.
Well, you're a hard lady to just get on the program because we've been going back and forth a little bit. And finally, what I had to do, folks, I said, here's my calendar. Here's the link. Here's my calendar. Put yourself in, please. And when I did that, I was finally able to get her. Now, for anyone who's watching live, please feel free. First of all, thanks for taking the time out of your positive, productive schedule to watch. Please feel free to ask questions, provide comments. I will give them and share them with Karen in real time. So for the people who do not know about you, can you give a little background about yourself, where you grew up, etc.?
Sure. And I want to also say that I'm right here in the heart of Black excellence in Oakland, California, where we're very much celebrating our victory yesterday. And it's just such a thrill to be in this community. And, I'm actually not originally from the Bay Area. I grew up in a very conservative small town in the north of Colorado called Loveland, Colorado, which I actually recently learned is a sundown town. So I grew up in an almost entirely all-white community, but I've spent my adult life I was in school in Massachusetts, I was in South America, I was in Europe, then I moved to Austin, Texas, worked on my graduate degree, and later moved to New York City. And next month, it will be 5 years that I live here in San
Wow.
Francisco.
Now, out of all those places, what place have you been in the longest? Like 5 years sounds like an eternity for you to be in any city.
Well, as an adult, the longest place that I've lived someplace is New York City. So I lived there for 15 years.
Okay. Do you miss NYC?
I do miss NYC very, very much. But I have to say, I am so grateful that I live in the Bay Area. There are just so many incredible mentors and role models here, activists who I have learned so much from. And I'm just so grateful to be part of this community. And it's really a region that there's just so much wisdom here. It's the Bay Area was a majority people of color region and a majority people of color state for like a long time. And we were a big destination of the Underground Railroad. And of course, the center of the Black Panthers, and you still get to go and hear Black Panthers speak. I was at their 50th anniversary celebration in October. There was a beautiful exhibit at the California Museum here in Oakland, and so all of this is very much alive and present, and a really vital part of the Bay Area community, but it is under a lot of threat from people like me, people who grew up in all white parts of the country and attained college degrees and then moved to the Bay Area for the limitless career opportunities that are available to us here, but really don't have any experience interacting with people of color. And then when you go into these tech companies and you see who works there, it's almost entirely male, white, Asian. Maybe there's a man of color as a security guard or the custodian, or maybe a woman of color as an admin or in HR, something like that. So it is although, the Bay Area is very progressive in a lot of ways, it is also an area with a lot of police brutality, an area with very bad employment discrimination, and a real history of discrimination. James Baldwin made a documentary about racism in San Francisco in 1963, and I hate to say it, but little has really changed.
Wow. Now, you mentioned where you grew up in Colorado. There weren't too many faces of color in that environment. People must ask you, what's a lady like this doing stuff like this? And I want to know where that journey started.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that awareness start? And where did the awareness become the passion that it is today?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So from a very early age, I believed in social change and community organizing. So when I was in elementary school, conservative parents tried to get Judy Blume books removed from my school library, and I organized a petition campaign and went and spoke to the school district, to the Board of Education, and made a case of why us kids really needed to have these Judy Blume books in the library, why they were so important to us. And we won. We got to keep the Judy Blume books, and yes. So I've been protesting, I was very active in the anti-apartheid movement, protesting in high school, college, all of that, very engaged in volunteer service. And then I was a Latin American studies major. So I decided, initially I wanted to be a development economist, but when I went to Latin America for my junior year abroad, I decided I really wanted to focus on my own country and our issues. And so when I moved to Austin to work on my master's degree, I saw a flyer that a shelter for recently arrived Central American refugees was looking for volunteers. So I started volunteering there and just, hanging out, getting to know these people who were fleeing violence and poverty and making their way to have a better life. And then this is at the same time as Proposition 187 and all of this real anti-immigrant campaigning here in California. And I just was so struck, like, why are these people being vilified? Like, they're so incredible. And I got very enmeshed in the immigrants' rights movement. That's why I actually moved to New York City to help immigrants become citizens. And then after September 11th, the initiative I moved there to work on, after we helped 50,000 New Yorkers apply for their citizenship, was defunded. And that was right around the time that reports came out that said 50% of Black men in New York City don't have a job, and we have 200,000 almost entirely Black and Latino young adults who are not in school and not working. And those reports just floored me. I was you could tell anecdotally, just, when you live in New York City, that there's a problem. But when I saw those numbers and the fact that these reports came out and nobody seemed to think it was a big deal, it wasn't like front page of the New York Times. It was like section C, column, 27. And that's when I really decided to shift focus. I thought that the answer was workforce development and connecting people to internships and job training, and that's how they would get into these companies. And I started working in that field, and because of that, I became a mentor to many young adults from Black and Latino young adults living in New York City, and help them launch careers in tech. And I became really close to them through my mentoring. And that was when I really had to confront my own racism, when I really started to see how different these young adults were from the way that I perceived they were going to be like, and where did those stereotypes come from, and why did I have so many associations of what they would be like, and then just listening to their stories. And that even after they went off to work for these companies, they were facing so much discrimination and microaggression at these companies. And so in 2014, when the decision was announced that Darren Wilson would not be indicted for killing Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, that's when I had a major turning point. I kind of reflected and realized basically my whole career I'd worked in communities of color and been really focused on working with people of color. But from that point on, from 2014 on, I was like, no, I need to be really focused on white people, because we need to change. We need to change the way that we think and behave. And we need to get rid of our racism. And that became my real calling in life.
I don't know if we've ever discussed this live before, and I don't even know if we discussed it offline. When you initially started this journey, what was the reaction from family and friends?
Well, I am blessed to have very supportive parents who have always, I've been a nonconformist my whole life. I've always taken very strong viewpoints on things, whether it was when I was working with immigrants and I was extremely staunchly pro-immigrant, those types of things. And it's been actually really interesting. I actually live with my mother. She moved to California and we live together. And just to see her evolution as well. She grew up in a very, very white environment, but she has come to her own understanding of systemic racism and her own understanding of how her whiteness benefited her and her family in a way that was almost invisible to her without my kind of teaching her that. She has come on that journey on her own regard, and I really appreciate it. It's been really good. I do have, other family members who, do not agree with me whatsoever. I have family members who voted for our current president. I don't have any friends. I may have one friend who voted for our current president. Most of my friends have similar political viewpoints to me. But I will say this, I maintain a very diverse social network of people from all parts of the country. I think it's really important not to get siloed or too isolated in so I have a lot of different voices in there. And it's interesting to see how people respond. I do get a little frustrated because, if I post something about, my family or something like that, I'll get a ton of likes and all of that stuff. And then when I post these questions where I'm really asking people to think about racism, I don't get that much response. There's like a few people who will like that. But you know what? I'm just going to keep going, and um, people get angry with me. I really, you know, this cause is more important to me than like, you know, losing someone's friendship. And I am so persuaded, I'm so crystal clear about the righteousness of this cause that there's really nothing you could do to dissuade me from it.
Well, you know what? Like a mentor tool said the other day to me, with things like this, it's uphill all the way.
That's right.
Absolutely. I want to shout out someone who says they're a friend of yours. Do you know a gentleman named Max Harris?
Oh yes, Max is my good friend. He's
So
so
I
sweet.
so I
Yes.
don't know if Max is watching, but he started following me in like 2 minutes ago via Twitter. So Max, if you are watching, thank you so much for following me on Twitter. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free, and I will certainly follow you back and send you a personal message after we're finished our epic conversation. On the flip side, Karen, when you started this journey, what was the reaction you got from communities of color? Did you have to? Did they accept you? Did you have to prove yourself that you were committed to their cause?
That's really interesting. So when I started on this, I already had a really diverse friends, because of all of the work that I did mentoring young people. So I'm probably mentors to about 200 young adults across the country. And I also have a lot of mentors myself. I have a lot of mentors of color, who I've become close to. So when I lived in actually throughout my whole career, I think I've had like two white bosses. I've almost always worked for leaders of color, and I've almost always, in fact, I've always worked in majority people of color work environments. And so I've had that experience of just relationship building very early on. And so I think people do trust me because I didn't just like wake up one day and say, oh, this is what I'm going to do, and just kind of out of the blue break out of like an all white social circle. I've been part of movements for a really long time, and working in social change for a really long time. Now, that said, I've certainly had my share of mistakes and stumbles along the way, and I'm really grateful. Like right now, I'm in this fantastic year-long course for white women taught by Catrice Jackson, who's just an incredible anti-racism educator, and I highly recommend working with her. And I am learning so much on this journey. And even since the time that I was on the show with you, so January 2016, that would be like about 2 months or a month and a half after San Francisco Police Department executed Mario Woods, a 26-year-old Black young man in Bayview, Hunters Point. And I got very involved in police accountability activism. And I think that work also, and the relationships that I built in that with police accountability activists of color has also been a major learning experience for me. And also just in general, when you really start to dive deep into police accountability activism, it's like I say, I say, well, I used to think I knew what white supremacy was, but then when you start to get involved with the police accountability work, that's when you really, I mean, it is so much deeper. It's so much deeper than what you thought, and you're just constantly, and then like the election, of course,
We're going to get to
just
all of
like,
this. We're going to
yeah.
get to some of this during this conversation.
Jump again. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and of course, do note that Karen will be back because we could spend an hour just on one thing. I'm speaking it that we get at least a decent amount of content from her in the next few minutes, but I'm not going to promise anything because she has so much to share. But but remember, she is going to come back.
Thank you, Dr. Vibe.
Let me ask you something. We're going to talk, well, you're going to share with us tonight about anti-racism and white supremacy in America. Before we start this journey, what are your definitions of anti-racism and what is your definition of white supremacy?
Well, I guess, racism is the belief that a certain race is superior to all others and therefore deserving of everything that it has. And other people are inherently inferior because of their race. So anti-racism to me is the antithesis of that you don't believe that any race is superior or inferior, and you recognize the humanity in everybody. And and white supremacy, very similar, is that white people are superior and should be in command at all times.
So this is what I'm suggesting we do. We're going to take a little journey. Now, this is what I'm looking at, and I'm hoping that you're going to take us along a journey. Anti-racism and white supremacy in 3 different stages. Before this election, during the election, post-election.
Okay, great.
So let's get your thoughts on where anti-racism, the state of anti-racism and white supremacy was before the last election campaign for president in the United States.
Right. So let's start with white supremacy, okay? We are a white supremacist nation. It is written into our founding documents. It's part of our economy. It's part of every institution in our society. It is the basis of a lot of the wealth in this country, is all rooted in white supremacy. So I would say that has been a very prominent aspect of American culture, and that to have a white male leader who speaks about, asserts white supremacy is also a very pervasive part of American culture. And in that sense, Donald Trump is not at all a break with our past. He's very much a continuation of leaders that we've had dating back to, before the Revolutionary War, dating back to 1619, really. So in that sense, he's a continuation. What I will say is that he, throughout the campaign, he rooted the campaign in racism and white supremacy. And what was terrifying to see was how much power that message had, and how people would turn out to hear him speak hours, before he would arrive, and the kind of, pull that this then created for these extremist organizations, and that they're gaining in membership, they're gaining in financial resources, they're gaining in power. That is definitely a noted increase, as well as the hate crimes, all of that. And the statistics on police brutality is also rising. So I can't think of the name right now, but it's a national organization that tracks the number of police deaths. And already in the first 5 months of 2017, it's 100 more than in the first 5 months of, 5 years ago. So all of that, I think, is definitely on the rise. And I think that this president was definitely reelected because there was a backlash in our country of white people concerned about our position in the society and really wanting to maintain our role as the dominant force, as the people who tell everybody else what to do. And you see that in the counties that voted for him. Not only are they the whitest counties in the country, but they're also counties that are in tremendous distress. So they have the highest rates of alcoholism, death by overdose, suicide. These people are really under a lot of pain. And I think they're really suffering because their kind of vision of what their life was going to be like is not turning out the way that they wanted. And they're looking for someone to blame for that. And it's, you know, it's easy to point to all these folks as being responsible for that, when in fact, you know, this is, it's really capitalism and kind of the overarching system we have in our country, big business. You know, one thing for me, like growing up where I grew up, the rich people were the orthodontists. You know, that was like my idea of what it was to be rich. Then I moved to New York City and saw, you know, the real 1% and the way that they live. And I think it's almost unfathomable for people. That, I mean, to me, that's one of the weirdest things about Donald Trump, is how people who have very limited resources somehow identify with him when he's like so far removed from their reality. Anyway, so I would say the state of white supremacy, Donald Trump is a continuation of that. But it's also strengthening the support for it. And you see that in kids imitating Donald Trump in the schools and bullying their classmates and all this terrible stuff. Now, as for the state of anti-racism, you know, there's always been incredible leadership, you know, starting with the enslaved people who were the leaders in getting abolition, you know, the leaders in ending slavery, and you know, white partners as well in that struggle throughout our history. There's always been great people who have stood up for anti-racism, and for truth and for justice. And you know, I love Ida B. Wells. I'm very, very much inspired by her and everything that she did. And what concerns me right now is that, like, all these racists are getting so much airtime. They're on the national media all the time. Like, why are they giving them so much platform? They need to be giving platform to all these incredible anti-racist voices. And a lot of those anti-racist voices are really, really brilliant, bold women of color who are trying to help people understand that what we think just isn't true. It's just wrong. It's all a bill of goods that's been sold to us to keep us all tampered down so that a small handful of people can have tremendous power and wealth.
This time's gonna run out so fast, so I'm gonna make sure I get a few things. And it's interesting. What were you feeling during that election campaign? What were you feeling? What were you feeling about America during that election campaign?
You know, to be honest, Dr. Vibe, I was so enmeshed in local anti-police brutality activism in 2016, I wasn't even really focused on it. You know, I thought, I mean, there were times, like in September 2015, I wrote an open letter to Hillary Clinton because I felt like she wasn't doing a good enough job reaching out to young voters, especially young voters of color, and just in general, that by hewing to a more moderate platform, she was not going to energize the base to turn out to vote for her. So I was concerned about it in September 2015, especially when I realized the amount of racism and how Donald Trump was basing I knew in September 2015 that he would be the nominee. And I knew it would all be rooted in racism. And then, like in March of 2016, I went to this really incredible national forum on the state of race in America. And I was like, in Washington, D.C., I was like one of 3 white people there. And when I asked the other 2 white people, they were there because they worked for one of the organizations. There were like incredible, like a couple hundred really, really brilliant people of color in that room. And we were talking about the election, and they were talking about, why they did not think voters of color were going to turn out to vote. They were being suppressed, gerrymandered. They weren't inspired by the candidates, especially young voters were not at all drawn to Hillary Clinton. And that was another moment when I got really, really scared. But there's a part of me that's very hopeful and optimistic. And I really wanted Hillary Clinton to be president. Like, I really wanted a feminist woman to become our president. And I thought for sure, I thought she had it. You know what I'm saying? My friends here in Oakland, my very radical friends, were like telling me Donald Trump is going to be president. And I refused to listen to them. I was like, no, this cannot possibly be. Meanwhile, I was so enmeshed myself with this other activism. I wasn't really volunteering on the campaign. I wasn't doing anything. And even in my own advocacy for her, because a lot of my friends are more radical than me, I don't think I was as strong as I could have been in like trying to support her among my friends. And so when the election results came, I was just, it was like the worst breakup ever. It was like being dumped by your country, being dumped by your future. And the following day, I was in downtown San Francisco, and this impromptu protest of high school kids who walked out and were marching down the street, chanting, "Not our president, not our president." And I just burst into tears, and I think that's, for me, that was also the next day I was at my kids' school, and just seeing their incredible goodness and knowing that they were going to be led by someone who's so evil. And I was so mad. I was just like so mad at myself for not taking it more seriously and not engaging at the full level that I could have to support her, and just so mad that people would vote for such a horrible person. I mean, how could this possibly be? It was just really, really emotional. So, but I knew I couldn't stay there. I could not stay in that depressed state. I had to get back out. I had to keep on trumpeting my message and just getting out there. And that's basically been the way that I've pulled myself through this emotionally.
Okay. Well, Max Harris shouts out, and he says, yes, KF, whatever happened to the white ladies with the pink hats?
Great question.
All right.
Great question,
I'm just relaying. I'm just the messenger. Obviously, that's between you two. I'm just in the middle here. So you go for it, Max and KF. You go for it.
Yeah. Well, in fact, if you follow me on Twitter, I did my first ever Twitter thread today to white feminists. And I do want to know what the hell happened. Like, I went to the march in Washington, the big January 20th Women's March, which was absolutely fantastic. It was just incredible. Just the level of, I've been going to protests my whole life. I had never been to one that was that big. It was like, just from the moment you arrived, like every subway car was just packed to the gills. It was like a ton of people. But then, like, literally, what the heck happened? Are you still active in your communities? Are you speaking out? Are you going to run for office? Are you going to support candidates of color? And that my Twitter thread today was like, listen, guys, 2018 is just around the corner. And we are going to have, I know there are going to be armed groups of men suppressing the vote. They're going to militarize our election. Plus we have all this crazy Russian interference. It's like, it's insanity. Women, white women and people of color, if we can come together and find ways to interrelate as equals and actually support one another, and white women share our resources and our power with our brothers and sisters of color, we are the majority. We are the majority of the electorate. That's who sent President Obama to the White House twice, okay? But we can only do this if we learn how to trust and care for one another, and if we actually know each other and are kind and gentle with one another. I love this this Audre Lorde paper from 1980 when she talks about why have we never had a powerful women's movement in our country. And she says race is the single biggest dividing factor among us, and we can't get over our racism, and that's why we can't come together and be the force that we need to be. And I'm just terrified of this. I'm terrified as a mother. I'm terrified for the environment. I mean, I don't know if you saw, you're up in there in Canada, the Arctic ice collapse, and like whole sheets of ice are just like melting and dissolving. And the ocean is going to be dead in 40 years. We just let the Great Barrier Reef die. And it was like, no one even said anything about it. It was like, it just happened like it's no big deal. That is terrible. I mean, we cannot let the ocean die. We cannot let this Arctic ice collapse. We have the terrible famine going on in the Horn of Africa, like the largest famine since World War II. Millions of people without food. We have the terrible war in Syria, all those children being bombed. I mean, and we're caught up with this ridiculous administration that can't get it. It's just, it boggles the mind. So I just pray, ladies in the pink hats, if you're watching this, please continue to engage. Find your local candidates of color. Find your people in your community. Connect with them, and let's build power together. And let's take our country back from these people so we can preserve our environment. We can end these terrible wars, and we can create the future for our children that they desperately need.
Karen, you're so bad, because you know what? You're going to have to come back and we're going to have to chat about that. You know that, because that is, but joking aside, that a number of Black women said they didn't want any part of that march, because they said that, yes, we could go on this march, but if we have to march for a cause, we couldn't count on white women to march with us.
Yes.
So, but go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Me so much. Why don't white women view police brutality and mass incarceration as women's issues? Every victim is somebody's son or daughter. And why aren't we standing by their side and helping them and standing with them? Why aren't we at Black Lives Matter marches? We should be.
Max is giving you big applause right now, by the way.
Thank you, Max.
He's giving you.
Thank you, Max.
We will address that in another conversation, because that's a whole conversation in itself. I want to, because time is running off fast, at least get 2 or 3 more conversation pieces out. Here's one that's interesting that I want to get your feedback on. One of the regular contributors of my conversation, a gentleman named Rodney Kellum, he compared the Trump campaign and the Trump presidency to Adolf Hitler,
Mm,
in the fact that it got people who were disenfranchised very emotional and riled
mm.
up to make them act on emotion instead of reason. What do you think about that take?
Oh yeah, and I've seen that comparison elsewhere. Adolf Hitler was elected in November. It was a big surprise. It was a very similar constituency that elected him. It was very much a fear-based campaign. All of these parallels. And yes, I do, it's all about scapegoating and directing hatred based on racism to fuel your popularity. So I definitely see parallels, and it's terrifying.
Right. Let's get to 2017. It's June 13th. What are your thoughts and what are your concerns about racism and white supremacy? Since I've been alive, I've never seen the coverage or the attention given white supremacy in North America, especially in America, than ever. And you did point out that, why are the media covering? Because obviously it attracts eyeballs, which I don't know what that says about American society right now.
I I agree with you. I think it is the height of irresponsibility to cover these people and not cover the other voices. And the
Well, I
level,
think they are. I think they are covering the other voices. It just depends what media outlet, though, right?
yeah.
But do you feel do you feel that they shouldn't be getting the voices, these supremacists? Because they would
No,
say in the Constitution we have a right to free speech.
they can say whatever they want, but we shouldn't be broadcasting it. That is the height of irresponsibility. If we know that they are inciting hate, why are we amplifying it?
Okay.
Let them go talk to their 50 supporters or whatever, but it doesn't have to be all over the news.
Oh,
Um,
I want to interrupt you there.
mhm.
Now here's a concern that people have come to me with, saying, you know what? There's probably a lot more supporters, but they just don't want to show their true colors. For example, in the election, a lot of
Mhm.
people, because again, when you go into a voting booth, that's your own business. You
Mhm.
don't have to tell anybody. But do you feel that there are more supporters than we really know about?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I feel that there are, well, when I think of white people, I think of us in a continuum, right? So there's some white people who are extremely racist, and there's some white people who've done a lot of work and are extremely anti-racist. And most white people are somewhere, in that continuum between those extremes. And I think what they're doing is changing what is considered normal to being more extreme, and getting more people to feel that they can express these viewpoints that they would have previously been ashamed to express in public. I mean, that their leaders have clearly said that is what the great boon that 45 is to them, is that now people feel free to express these viewpoints quite openly, and that it's socially acceptable to. Um, yeah. So I think what it behooves the anti-racists to do, we have to get out there too. We have to get our message out there too, and our education, our partnership with one another, our community, our candidates. We need to elect people on a strongly anti-racist platform and make that an explicit part of who we support in elections. And we need to hear that from them, or else we shouldn't vote for them.
As you're
And
share,
we run ourselves too.
as you're sharing your thoughts with us, something came up to me. I have a conversation piece for you. Do you feel that America is at war with itself?
Yes, I do feel that, you know, racism and capitalism are two symbiotic systems that feed off of each other. And now we're reaching this very strange point in history where 30 years from now, people of color are going to be the majority of the people in the United States. So the whole market is kind of shifting. And I think we're in this kind of sorting time where people are very unsure about what that means for them. You see companies trying to, on the one hand, become more diverse, but then really struggling that it's really hard to let go of all these practices. But yet they somehow know that if they don't change, they're going to drive themselves into irrelevancy because already in the under five group, children of color make up the majority. So I think it is a very strange time. And I honestly do fear that we are headed to some kind of armed conflict
Wow.
between people who believe in people who believe in anti-racism and people who believe in racism. I'm really fearful of that.
What makes you think that?
Well, you already see. I mean, look at what happened in Portland, or this rally that they had in Charlottesville. Um, People terrorizing kids' birthday parties. It's just there's a lot of hatred out there, and a lot of the folks who feel that way are armed. And it's a really, really scary time. I think everybody who believes in anti-racism, we need to turn it up. We need to turn our volume up to 11. We need to be really caring toward one another and supportive of one another. One of the things that kind of, I think, harms us is that we can be quite mean to one another. We who have different viewpoints. And I think that time to be mean with one another has ended, and we have to set aside our differences and really unite. And now that doesn't mean that we don't reflect on the mistakes we've made in the past and try and change or like just gloss over our differences. I'm not talking about that. I think we do need, in order for there to be unity, we have to spend some serious time building relationship and building trust, because white people have not, our history is not great. And we need to reflect on that and really think about how we can not repeat these mistakes we've made in the past, and how we can atone for them, and how we can be better partners in this struggle.
What does it say to you on how the previous administration commented on these issues, compared to, at least so far, the present administration not really saying anything at all?
Oh, well, the present administration, they want to stir up. This is their base. Their base is enlivened by racism. So they're not going to say anything. They're not going to condemn acts of violence. And if they do, they'll do it in this very half-hearted way, because that, he is the master salesman, and he knows that that is a key aspect of his popularity, and all he cares about is his popularity. He does not care one iota about this country. You saw it in the Comey testimony, that when Comey's going there to meet with him and wants to tell him about how the Russians have interfered with our election and messed up the whole election, And 45 does not care. He doesn't, that's not even of any import to him. The only thing that matters to him is how that affects him.
Two points that I want to get your thoughts on, and you had mentioned previously Trayvon Martin. I don't want to sound unpopular here, but we are probably going to see another one of those events in the next short term. Hopefully not. Hopefully we never see it. What do you feel, if anything, will be the administration's response if there's another Trayvon Martin incident?
Well, we just saw it in Dallas, right? The
Yep.
15-year-old with his brothers leaving a party, the honor student, very popular, very beloved, and the police just shot into the car and shot him dead right in front of his brothers and his friends. Um, I am terrified. You know, Jeff Sessions, the whole emphasis on law and order, even today in his testimony, opening with how murder is going up, it's exactly the rhetoric of the Nixon administration, this kind of fear-based rhetoric that we should be fearful of criminals, and all of this is this code for we should be fearful of people of color, and that we should militarize the police. You know, and in all fairness, under President Obama, the police were militarized. Like, all this military equipment from the wars was then reallocated to police departments, and you know, the police accountability piece is rooted in a Supreme Court decision that grants officers tremendous discretion that I think in and of itself is a sign of white supremacy, and that these officers, the Supreme Court justices, have very little understanding of the way that police operate in communities of color. So yeah, I'm sure there will be total callousness and disregard. Who were Trump's endorsements in the campaign? The National Fraternal Order of Police, the Border Patrol Union, the National Rifle Association, and the Ku Klux Klan. That's who he cares about.
20, 30, 40 years from now, when we look, or people look back at the Trayvon Martin incident, how much of an importance will that incident have on racism and white supremacy in America, in your opinion?
Well, I think, to me, the police brutality against people of color is like the most visible part of the iceberg. And then there's like all the mass incarceration that's underneath that, and all of the racial wealth gap and all these other systems, educational inequity, health inequity, that's all like leading that to happen. And so I think when things like that happen, when Trayvon Martin is killed or Michael Brown is killed, it becomes more apparent to more people how unfair these things are. Now, why that does not then inspire greater change, you know, that is something that I ask myself every day and I apply myself to. And I want to encourage everybody listening here. I know that the key to police accountability is from local activist pressure. So our police killed Mario Woods in December of 2015, and we got on it. You know, we were at every police commission meeting. We shut down police commission meetings. We demanded an external investigation. We got the U.S. Department of Justice. We testified. We protested. We had a hunger strike. My friend spent 17 days camped out in front of the Mission Police Station. We got the police chief fired. We got an external chief hired. We got a new use of force policy. And so what I'm trying to say is that, like, sometimes it can feel like these horrible police killings are inevitable, but the way to prevent them is to get super active on the local level and put as much pressure as you can on your mayor, on your city council people, on your police commission, and on the leadership of the police themselves. Because if you don't show up and put pressure, there's no pressure whatsoever for them to change.
Well, on that note, I'm going to say that's our second last commentary piece, but you've sort of given this already to the audience, but I want to package it up and put a bow on it. So, final comments. What are your calls to action for the government, for communities that are not of color, and then for communities of color? So what is your call to action for your government when it comes to anti-racism and white supremacy?
I think every level of government needs to do a racial equity analysis and see how policies are affecting people of different races. I say it all the time. If I were mayor, I would have a big thermometer in my office that shows Black male employment, because I know when Black males are employed and that number is going up, that means everybody is doing well, right? So I think you have to do a racial analysis in government. That's very, very important. For white people, I would say look ourselves in the mirror. It's very easy to point the finger and say, oh, those bad cops shouldn't be doing that, or oh, that bad president shouldn't be doing that. But all of us harbor these stereotypes. All of us harbor white supremacy, and we have to really work on ourselves and change our relationships, and then figure out what can we do at our kids' school? What can we do at our workplace? What can we do in our house of worship? We all have a sphere of influence that we can move in an anti-racist direction, and that's how racism ends. It does not end because the government tells us to stop being racist. It ends because we make choices in our daily life that then bubble up. And to communities of color, I would say stay active, stay hopeful. Let's build alliances. Let's get more leaders of color elected. I was so excited with the young man who just won mayor in Jackson, Mississippi, with like 92% of the vote. Incredible, Black millennial young man. It's just like so amazing to see all these young people of color taking leadership roles, and let's support them and be a part of this journey with them.
She just put the bow on the box. Well done. Karen, I would like to thank you for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule to share with us. As always, you were outstanding, and it was an epic conversation by you as always. If people want to touch base with you, how can they do that?
So my website is KarenFleshman.com. It's just the way it sounds, KarenFleshman.com, and there's a contact form on there, and I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I have a Facebook fan page. So please do reach out. I would love to stay in touch with you. And I just want to thank you, Dr. Vibe. I mean, the service that you provide the community, the safe space to have these conversations, and especially for men of color in our society who, really struggle with so much oppression and discrimination, to have someone like you to look up to, and you're bringing all these positive voices and sharing. It's such tremendous service to the community, and I really, really thank you for it.
Well, it's appreciated, not taken for granted. Right back at you. I'm looking forward to having you on, not after a year, but sooner, because I took down notes on other subjects or conversation pieces I want you to address. But we got a lot in a short amount of time. I really appreciate it. Also want to give a big shout out to Max. Thank you, Max, for watching live. Karen really appreciates it. And as I said, Max, I will send you a message, if not tonight, by tomorrow for sure. I'll send you a video message thanking you directly. I am Dr. Vibe. I'm host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. I am the host of Epic Conversations, and the Dr. Vibe Show is a place for epic conversations. If you want to touch base with me, if you want to watch some of the Epic Conversations via video, go to the YouTube page. We're getting closer to 200 subscribers. Max, be a subscriber for me, please. If you want to catch any of the audio replays, a number of different places, the website. Actually, the best ways to get a hold of me, 3 best ways. Twitter at drvibeshow. Email address dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. And website address, as I said, www.the drvibeshow.com. You can catch replays of my Epic Conversations audio-wise through the website. There's Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Tuned In Radio, Stitcher Radio, The Good Men Project, WJMS Radio, whole bunch of places. But easy, just go to the website. That's the easiest place. I also want to say that Max is going to keep on following. Thank you, Max, for keep on following. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Also like to say I'm a certified empowerment coach, and if you would like a complimentary 30-minute empowerment session, and he's subscribed. I love that. Call to action, bang. Max, I should get you on the show. You're good. There you go. Karen snapping the fingers. Bing, bing, bing. I love it. If you want a complimentary 30-minute empowerment session, please get in contact with me, because I'm a firm believer that the more empowerment you have in your life, the better life you'll have for yourself and the better you'll have for others. So as always, I like to say, you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles. You're a solution for someone's problem. And finally, before we sign off, I just have to say this. I'm waiting for something to come up here. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The views and opinions expressed on the Dr. Vibe Show are those of the guests. I call them friends. And do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Dr. Vibe Show. Any content provided by our guests/friends are of their own opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything. Now I can say you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles. You're a solution for someone's problem. And remember, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith. We'll catch you soon. Thanks again for watching live
and
on the replay. And don't celebrate too much with the Oakland people.